Are we live? I think we are live. Just a second. Switch account. Am I live? Hello. Am I live? Hello. Yeah. Am I live? Okay. So, without any further delays now, let's get started. So, share system and the audio कर देते हैं. Yep. Screen's visible. Just a second. Check. Yep. So fine. Yep. So last time I had got a recommendation that I was not able to have a look for the ongoing live chat. So I am having a set of a system this time so that I can keep track of the comments also. Also, it's a new setup. I have my F1 car's backside anyway also there. Yep. So I have the live chat now open in my panel also, so that if in case there's some doubts going on, I can have a look for that. So, hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Here we are once again to talk around geopolitics and the things that have been in the news. As it goes around, always just a small disclaimer. I'm not a geopolitical expert, just someone who loves to talk about geopolitics. Just wanted to make sure the chat's working fine. Yep, to go. So in this particular live stream, I'm going to discuss some 100 topics which have been in the news lately. It's a compilation, I would say, of the most relevant 100 topics which have been going about. I will try my level best to be factually correct wherever I can. If in case there are some things which I feel I might be going wrong, I would either red flag the question or I would have a look at the Google Baba. So this is how it would go. I think this might go for a bit long this time, but let's see. Yes, let's get started and let's see how we are able to proceed ahead. I would try to cover up the majority of portion. Gitaksh bhai is live on. Thanks, bhai. So yeah, let's get started. I have the questions here with me also in reference so that I can focus on the things that are now about to start. So let's get started. The first question: what does strategic quit? I missed one thing. Google Maps. Just a second. Now we are good to go. So coming back, the first question: what does strategic autonomy mean in today's multipolar world? So yeah, this has been in the news a lot lately. Especially we hear oftentimes saying that is strategic autonomy even a something which isn't being news to the today's world. So we saw the case of Venezuela. He declared himself to be the with respect to that he is the acting president. There was a Wikipedia page on that. Then also the case of Venezuela we had seen in the sorry Iran also we had seen in the last year, wherein the bomber planes of USA went in Iran, they bombed the nuclear facilities, and they just without any facing repercussions. So, coming on, what does strategic autonomy mean actually in today's multipolar world? See, the thing is, back during the when we had the case of USA and Russia being the major poles, and more or less apart from the non-aligned movement which used to take place, the maximum majority of the world was divided. They used to support either the USA or they used to support the side of Russia. And that's where the hindrance per se for the idea of strategic autonomy used to not exist well. For example, if you are an ally of the NATO directly, you are part of the NATO, you are a friend of USA, you would have to back USA in that things. And if you're backing USA in that things, you can't go against them. Same would be the case of Russia. For example, the countries of Belarus, or even the case of the countries which were originally part of USSR, the Kazakhstan area. You can't go against USSR at that time because of the concept of the world being divided into two factions and two majority peoples being the rulers of the world. So that's where I would say the strategic autonomy as a concept started to emerge slowly and slowly that countries should be independent when it comes to the idea of taking their own decisions. uh, I would say the turn of 21st century saw that countries were more or less able to take decisions at their own end. Slowly and steadily, they were able to take decisions which they felt were in tune with themselves. For example, slowly and steadily, I would say majority of the countries in Europe, they were trying to sideline. I won't say directly they sideline, but they are trying to sideline when it comes to the idea of USA or the idea of even the Russia case. But per se, strategic autonomy as a concept, I don't think still exists in the current era of multipolar world. Also, see the thing is, we have two powers. Sorry, one still power dominant left, which is the USA, and the another power which is building up is China. If I take the case of China and I take the case of its deals in Africa, so as per the latest reports itself, this particular country, Eswatini, majority of the countries which are part of the African Union, they are somewhere or the other, I would say, in debt or in, I would say, partnership with the country of China. And when you are tied with the strings of investment with another country, the idea of strategic autonomy does not actually take place. And that's the reason why a true multipolar world would might help that. If there are, I would like to add a comment here. If the powers are divided and the hegemony of few doesn't dominate, that's when the idea strategic autonomy comes about. Because if you're not tied with someone by the angle of the strings, that's when you can take their own decisions. And I feel strategic autonomy, though, is something which we need, but we don't see that happening. Even if they take the case of India, this is a very, I would say, shocking thing also that many of us didn't even knew. India had stopped taking oil from Venezuela long back. We had even stopped taking oil from Iran, and it was mainly regarding the sanctions which had been placed by the US government. And I won't say that that means that our own diplomacy or our strategic autonomy is being impacted, but somewhere or the other, the impacts of the great powers, so-called great powers, I would say, somewhere or the other, we have to listen them. And that's a sad story. But I see the things are changing. We saw Mark Carney's new statement recently where he said that if you're not on the table, you are on the menu. So that's where I see the idea of strategic autonomy once again building up. You have to step ahead, you have to make way for your own terms. And when it comes to the idea of tariffs, so India did apply tariffs also recently. There was that case of, I would say, the pulses, if I'm not wrong. So there was a news recently that India had applied tariffs on USA, or we were able to even talk with China at our own instead. So yeah, these particular small things that show that India has been trying to, I would say, counter back the way things have been happening. We did engage with China recently, so it showed that yes, the strategic autonomy as an example exists. But yes, the issues are there because there are somewhere or the other few powers which are still dominating the world. That's for the first case. Coming up next, has India moved away from non alignment or has it evolved? That's a very great question. And I think it's basically tied towards this question also. Is India's foreign policy reactive or proactive now? So, back in the time of the Cold War era, once again, there was the concept of the non aligned movement where countries like India and other countries also like Indonesia, Ethiopia, these basically tried to form a particular alliance with each other where they wanted to basically declare that we are not on the side of the USA or on the side of Russia. We are on the side of an overall peace. We won't be aligning with any particular faction. We would be taking decisions which are important to us. And that's where the idea of non alignment came to being. However, in the current era, these particular things have been slightly to change. We are slightly vocal, I would say, towards which particular, I would say, side we are towards and which particular side we are not towards. For example, in the recent build-up to the news of US applying tariffs on India, there was an article in Indian Express wherein it said that despite the fact that yes, tariffs have been increased on the Russian products, India would be looking towards an opportunity where our overall, I would say, autonomy, our overall financial independence, and our hegemony can be respected. So that's where I feel that the direct idea of non-alignment has started to, I would say, a bit of change, where we are able to align ourselves based on our own interests. If the true concept of non-alignment used to exist, which was back then, I think India would have been more of a reactive one. But slowly and steadily, we have started to, I would say, pursue the path of proactiveness. Yes, there are lacks, like we see in the case of the tariff buildups, or in the case of not being able to directly condemn, I would say, the way Mr. Trump was saying regarding the India Pakistan issue. But slowly and steadily, yes, the idea of the proactiveness has been changing. The initial tendency of us being reactive and just responding when things have happened compared to what we are not doing, I think that particular angle has been changing. For the case of non alignment and has it evolved? I would say it has bit evolved. I would say the way we are able to now represent our friendship with Russia has improved. Back in the era of Cold War, we were not able to say that thing directly, but slowly and steadily, we are able to acknowledge this fact that yes, Russia is a all-weather friend of ours. We have the S-400 missiles from the side. We have the BrahMos cooperation with them. Nuclear plants cooperation is being existing. It's been, I would say, even ramping up, despite the fact that the pressures have been building up from the side of USA. The overall friendship has been increasing. So I would say the idea of non-alignment has, I would say, a bit evolved in the today era, where yes, still we are not on the side of a particular faction, still we are not part of any big military alliance, but slowly and steadily, at least we are now, I would say, aware of what are the factions, or what are the areas we would like to cooperate with other people also. So that's the thing which I feel for in the case of non-alignment, that yes, we are evolving, and I see this in the angle of cooperation. I think these particular questions test more of my own knowledge rather than me going about interlinking various things. So yeah, this might be a tough live stream, but I'm open for this challenge also. So let's start. This is in the foreign policy, proactive, reactive. I think we discussed the same question last time also, that are we extrovert or are we introvert? And here I feel that the idea of being on the both sides is way something we might hinge very well. Introvert in the sense that yes, we are not, I would say, per se part of big military alliances or part of some big trade alliances, but slowly and steadily we have been part of, I would say, agencies which are promoting the idea of a global connectivity. India did visit the SCO summit. We did, I would say, meet Mr. Jinping from China. So that shows that yes, we are, I would say, evolving. We are not just reactive. We are not taking things out of our own end and just started to, I would say, a bit of evolve. That's the case for India's foreign policy. Coming over to how should India balance relations with US and Russia? That's a very great question. So last month, if I'm not wrong, yes, that's when Mr. Putin came in India, and the alliances and the treaties between the two countries were once again discussed. The idea of defense deal was discussed, and somewhere in the line of the Mericom and the Comcasa, which we have with USA, we also signed some particular deal with Russia also. So this shows that yes, despite the fact that Russia and USA have been locking horns against each other since, I would say, a long, long time now. But still, we are, as a independent country, as a sovereign nation, we are able to deal with both of them well. I think India is few of those countries which is able to, I would say, be on each and every table. It's a bit of surprising to see that despite the fact that yes, we are criticized often that we are not able to react, or we are seen, as they say, the elephant in the room. Whenever the idea of climate change comes about, our picture is shown as an elephant who is not able to cooperate with the rest of the world. But still, feel that we are a bit of cooperative. The way we present ourselves, we don't present ourselves as enemy of anyone. We always look from the ambit of the cooperations, and that's where I feel India is able to well balance the relation with US and Russia. uh, yes, I think the issue still exists because, see, the thing is, if you take this also with example of the real world, suppose we have two friends and those two friends don't, I would say, go much amongst each other, and sometimes you are supporting a friend and sometimes I'm not supporting that particular friend. So I think it might lead to some angle of animosity. There have been times where India had to, I would say, shy away from directly supporting Russia, and that's where I personally feel that that might be an issue in the future run. In the last video, I'd explained where, if God forbid, an incident comes about where India and China goes against war with each other, what would be this case of Russia? Who would it support? That's where I mentioned the idea of Russia. I think would end up supporting China in the long run because of the idea of the all-weather friendship which Russia and China have. So that's where I feel that if India is, I would say, be more able to communicate with USA. That, see, Russia has have always supposed us in the ancient past, whether it be the case of 1971 war or the case of other helps, even the current Operation Sindhu where we had the help of S-400 supplies. So I think that's where India needs to communicate USA. We need to communicate that if you are allowed to have your golden dome project in Greenland, if you are able to, I would say, take decisions based upon your strategic autonomy, take decisions based upon your own security, I think we as a nation should be also allowed to take decisions. That's where I stand, Russia. Yes, the answer sounds a bit diplomatic. It sounds more on the line of cooperation, but what can we do? There was this very nice, I would say, article week where they said that this is of turbo charged Trump turbulence. So let's see how this era evolves now. We are also spectators here. So, is India's foreign policy reactive or proactive? I think we directly covered this thing here. Coming up next, just a second. Should India take question number 5? Yes, I feel India should start to take a more clearer position on global conflicts. And the reason why I say this particular answer is it shows that we also expect the same when such a situation comes at our home. Yes, I know we have to manage this thing diplomatically somewhere or the other, that we can't just go and comment on the things that have been happening. But I feel if we are directly clear on what we are, I would say, having a stance on an ongoing particular war or ongoing particular conflict, I think it would better help for the case. See, the thing is, if you are always on the fence, if you are always, I would say, going towards the mode of the introvert, and the India's route of, I would say, abstaining when it comes to the case of UN, I would say, discussions, somewhere or the other, it sends, I would say, a wrong, I would say, connotation, because the thing is, uh, if you expect a country to cooperate with you for a long times to come by, and if we are not able to, I would say, promise them that comfort, I would say, the clear stance when they need, I think it leads to a bit of animosity. That's where I feel the idea of India being, I would say, fixated towards a particular stance should be there. But the thing is, once again, the idea of the multipolar world, when it comes to the idea of the multipolar world, you have to engage with a lot of countries. India can't just say that Russia has the right to defend against NATO, or we can not directly say that Ukraine has the right to defend its own country when the war has been going on. We can't just take, I would say, white or a black stance. somewhere or the other, the gray road we end up taking. But I feel that's the case when it comes to the idea of diplomacy. You have to, I would say, take a stance. You have to, I would say, appease a particular people, and then I would say go against someone or the other, because that's how I would say diplomacy goes about at the end of the day. There's that very famous quote which my friend often likes to quote. He says that we are living in a realist world where countries imagine a idealist scenario. So if you think that idealism can prevail when you are the one who are going for a realist mode, I don't think it would survive in the long run. That's where I feel that if the nations are clearer on their positions on global conflicts, it would be much better to, I would say, accommodate a cooperation for us also in the long run. But I guess it leads to issues, diplomatic issues. So that's the case for this particular thing. Should India take clearer positions on global conflicts? Coming up next ahead, how has India's foreign policy changed post 2014? See, I will try my best to be politically neutral here, first of all, because I know what everyone is thinking right now when this particular answer comes about. Before I proceed ahead, I would like to firstly say a particular things here. If you go from my record in the past couple of years when it comes to the idea of posting things on Instagram, LinkedIn, or my WhatsApp account, I would consider myself to be a centrist person with a tendency to go towards right. Right wing. And I would tell my logic for the same. Having had interacted from multiple peoples during my stay in IIT Roorkee and also the preparation which I've been doing for UPSC examination, you get to know about multiple people, you get to know about multiple perspectives. And that's where I feel the idea of centrist is something which comes about. Why I say that we are towards the side of the right wing, I think there are two reasons for that. Firstly, is the angle of personal. My parents have been, I would say, from the side which has been the cultural angle of Hinduism. So when you follow, I would say, the religion, the angle of culture, you are tend to focus towards the wing of right wing. There's that very, I would say, good classification once done by Mohak Mangal on his YouTube channel, where he classified what's the difference between the right wing and the left wing. In the case of right wing, he had mentioned that right wing focuses on more about the ideas of culture, the ideas of cooperation, as compared to the left wing focusing more upon the ideas of freedom. So in the case of right wing, we tend to support the idea of culture, and that's why the upbringing of mine shows the idea of the right wings. Second reason, most of my friends, uh, which were part of my, I would say, know-how in my back in school days, their parents, somewhere or the other, had association with BJP government. So that's where I would say the constant listening about the BJP activities used to come in my ears. So that's why I would say I'm a centrist person with a tilt of right wing. So I think with this particular thing in mind, the next thing which I'm about to say might show why I have a particular ideology or why I feel this might be the case. So coming back to the question now, how has India's foreign policy changed post 2014? I would say one thing, that yes, we are more, I would say, active and able to position ourselves. And I would say the biggest reason is not just the idea of the policies, the polity. The biggest idea is economy and a somewhat hard power which we have been able to build in the recent years. And once again, this all goes back to the past. So going back to the context. That's why I say the context matters. 1998, the Pokhran testing came about. Entire world was left in mayhem. That how has India tested nuclear weapons? How has India been able to do this? The sanction was started to apply under the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. Then came the Manmohan Singh government, and the reason why I have huge respect for Manmohan Singh, sir, is despite the fact that he was not able to take decisions the way he would have wanted, I would say still he was the greatest politician, the greatest, I would say, economist which India has ever had. I would like to quote his own saying here that the future would be kinder to him as compared to the conventional media, and it's very true. To be able to talk out with USA the idea of the nuclear deal, and to win a confidence motion in the elections, in the parliament, when there were people which were against the idea of going with a nuclear deal with USA. I think it did a very pretty job with that. And that's where I see a initial base of India having a stance of proactiveness, of being firm on their own stance, started to build up. Yes, there has been issue in the past. In the past, a direct, I would say, the counter strike which we used to do against Pakistan did not take place. We had the 2001 Parliament attack, then the 2008 Bombay attacks. The way we have treated the case during the Operation Sindoor or the Uri or the Pulwama attacks, I think yes, we were much more, I would say, strong in our stance. At that time, the idea of appeasements, or not the word appeasement, I would say, the idea of, I would say, the use of letters and the use of bringing up channels of communication did not serve the purpose very well. See, see, when it comes to the idea of, I would say, diplomacy, you have to know one particular thing in mind. When it comes to the case of Pakistan, I think India has tried to do with them anything and everything. Everything has been covered with them. The angle of cricket, angle of, I would say, culture, I would idea of economy, everything has been tried about. And when you can't, I would say, chalk out a path for them, somewhere or the other you have to take a stance. And that's where I feel that post 2014, at least now we are able to, I would say, much more aggressively act against Pakistan. Coming over to the global scale, I would say yes, uh, somewhat we have been more able to accommodate the way things have been going on. Yes, there have been failures, but once again, I would like to be a bit of diplomatic here. I would like to be much more rational here before I quote some politically wrong thing. So I would say that based on what we were given and the train of development, the results are now brewing up. Because anything and everything that's happening right now is because of things which has happened in past. And quoting Atal Bihari Vajpayee साहब once again that सरकारें आएंगी जाएंगी, सत्ता का खेल चलता रहेगा, but ये देश रहना चाहिए. And it's the things which have done in the past, the things which have been building up in the foreign policy. That's the reason why we are where we are. India छोड़ो Canada चलते हैं. Yeah, we will go to Canada. I have a document for Canada also. Down the questions. So coming up next, if I have to take the example of Canada here, so just a small, I would say, divergent here. So the thing with Canada has been the issue of the perennial issue of Khalistan issue. It is a friend Gitaksh, he's in the chat. So yeah, for him, Canada topic I'm discussing now, going a bit tangent. In the case of Canada, Justin Trudeau had been supporting the faction of, I'm not remembering his name, which was that leader of Khalistan in Canada. I have to check. Name of Canadian Khalistan leader, part of politics in Canada. Jagmeet Singh, yeah, Jagmeet Singh. That basically shows that I don't even care about these people to even remember the name. So Jagmeet Singh was someone who had been, I would say, being given a lot of support by the side of the Canada government, just to, I would say, the appease his own vote bank, just to, I would say, cater to his own economy. He had been supporting the idea of Jagmeet Singh and the government, which and the political party which we had. So that's where he was, I would say, about to even take such a rash step where he took the decision of going a full blown attack against India. The mentioning of the Niger killings, the angle of India being involved without any relevant information, which we don't even have right now. This particularly shows how the way Canada had been dealing with India. And at the end of the day, we saw what happened. We, I would say, as a whole nation, went up against them. We did the diplomatic channels. We did the diplomatic stance against them. We cancelled those agreements for visa approvals, and we saw how Canada started to feel the brunt of that. Mark Carney is back now in Canada, and I truly respect that man. That man knows how to run a country, I would say, per se. He is able to counter, I would say, even Trump recently. The recent comments of him during the Davos summit, I have even saved them. Just a second for reference of all. I really like that man, Carney. So he quoted this particular statement during the Davos summit, that we as the middle powers. First of all, I like that he was humble enough to say that Canada is a middle power. That's something I have seen very less when it comes to the idea of the global north. So he mentions that the middle powers should start to live the real truth. They should start to name the reality, and they should stop to say that the idea of rules based order is still existing now. It's not. They should say it opposingly and very much, I would say concretely, that it is a system of intensifying great power rivalry where the most powerful pursue their interests using economic integration as coercion. And we are seeing this particular thing happening right now. Policies are being formulated, things are being done in the way which is helping only a certain particular section of governments, whereas the so-called, I would say, economically weaker ones are facing the brunt. That's the case for Canada. Thanks a lot, Gitaks, for being in the chat. Misty is also here. So we have done question 5, we have done question number 6. Canada is also done. Canada done. And my true respect to Mark Carney, sir. I very much love the way he was able to counteract against Trump as compared to what Trudeau had been doing. So coming up next with the question number 7, can India be a Vishwa Guru without being a hard power? Just a second. First of all, this particular word of Vishwaguru has been, I would say, seen as a bad light with many people. Once again, sorry for going a bit track, but I would like to go back to the map of India. So there has been a trend in the past wherein certain, just a second. So there has been certain trend in the past wherein the neighborhoods of India, they have said that India has a big brother attitude, and we try to, I would say, intermingle in their policies is what has been their claim, especially the countries of Nepal. It has been also the case with the Maldives, where I would say a visible frustration was shown against Indian. I don't know why this particular thing happened, despite the fact that India has always helped. And if help is the small word, I would say we have went well and beyond the ask when it comes to the idea of neighborhood. So there is this doctrine when it comes to the idea of India's neighborhood policy. So we had our PM with the name of Mr. I.K. Gujral sir. So I.K. Gujral sir had given the doctrine of Gujarat doctrine. Under the Gujarat doctrine, it was basically said that we as Indians, as a country, we should, I would say, formulate policies, or we should, I would say, deal with neighborhoods in such a way that we do not think this of a transactional status, but rather as something where we are able to help and to contribute to the overall growth of South Asia. However, our gesture has been seen by few peoples from the angle of a big brother attitude of we being forcing our own stance on them. And that's where I mentioned the idea of why Vishwaguru is seen in a bad light sometimes. And instead, the word of Vishwa Bandhu is something which many scholars prefer to speak. Coming over to the angle of can India be a Vishwaguru? Big fan, sir, from Canada. Arun bhai, welcome, yeah. So, coming on the angle of can India be a Vishwaguru without being a hard power? See, if the world is an example, if USA is an example, and China has been the case, the Russia has been the case, I think it will be tough for India to just go and be the dominating power without having the angle of hard power. Yes, the case of soft power has been very much well for India. We are able to project our culture across the world. Yoga is something which was taken from India. And if you are someone who is learning yoga from watching that uh, UK people or USA people, I would say, boss, you are going to the wrong track. uh, Yoga was something which India had and it was given to the rest of the world. Even the case of the maths, the formulas which we use, the discipline that we use, the overall power which we have nowadays in the field of space sector also, ISRO sending in the Blue Gate from the side of USA, other missions that we have done, we were able to do the Mars mission in one go. So yes, these particular soft powers work a lot, but at the end of the day, if you have to dominate, if you have to, I would say, become the world leader, you have to be militarily way stronger. We have to expand our military base, especially around the seas. There has been a trend across the world that whoever dominates the sea dominates the rest of the world. The reason why UK was able to dominate the entire world because they had a huge army, and the navy which they had was just surreal. It was just like anything, they were able to dominate the rest of the world. USA has been dominating the oceans right now because of the aircraft carriers, the chartered planes which they have, and the other power which they have. So when it comes to the idea of India, yes, soft power has been helping us. We have been able to present our image as the Vishwa Guru, as the idea of the Vasudev Kutumbakam, which we mentioned. The G7 happens, other events happen, and it's always there. But yes, in the long run, if we want to dominate, if we want to showcase the world that yes, we are also someone who can be dependent as a completely different pole, we have to have the hard power at the end of the day. Because, like I said, it's a realist world, and if you want to win, you have to be realist. Quoting Machiavelli here, Max must happen. Machiavelli here. This is politics, and at the end, only thing matters is realism. Is India punching below its weight diplomatically? 100% true. This is something which I can 100% agree on. That yes, we are punching below our weight diplomatically. There used to be a time where we had, I would say, less resources, and I would say less allies. Oh, sorry, less partners, because India never used the word allies, we used the word partners. So, yes, there was a time when we used to have less partners. Yes, there was a time where we did not have the direct, I would say, the cards to present to the rest of the world. But in the current era, India can punch above its weight class very, very easily. We can easily go up and against many peoples if we genuinely want to do that. But somewhere or the other, that classic word which we hate listen in the landscape of India and the bureaucracy idea is there is lag in the bureaucratic setup. I don't remember spelling. So bureaucratic. I hope I have spelled it right. Yep. So there is a lag when it comes to the idea of the bureaucratic setup, and why I want to say this particular example. Like Latin America is somewhere which we have been expanding recently. We had have that Khanej Bidesh Limited Agency of India going in Argentina. Yeah, I know the grammar Nazir here. So, so the Khanij Bidesh Limited had went to Argentina, and they had, I would say, signed a deal with lithium reserves there. But the biggest issue which still comes in the case of India, Argentina, or in general India, Latin America, has been the diplomatic channels. If you have to directly go from India to Latin America, you can't directly go there. You either have to take the route of the sea or take the route of the plains, which would be the hopping angle. You reach Turkey, you reach Egypt, you reach UAE, and then you go on another plane, and then you reach Latin America. When you do not have a direct one-to-one communication channel existing between the two nations, I think it's a big issue when it comes to the idea of diplomatic talks. So that's where I feel the diplomacy has been lagging behind. Somewhere or the other, the channels which should have been, I would say, expedited has been lacking about, and we can do it well. When it comes to the idea of India's diplomacy, especially in the foreign run, we are the best. I still remember that quote by Sushma Swaraj, madam, where she had mentioned that if you are anywhere and at any zone, we will reach there and we will help you out. And we saw that. See, we can make as many memes as much we want to make when it comes to the idea of the government and the memes which come about. When the case of Russia-Ukraine war happened, yes, the things were a bit exaggerated sometimes by the, I would say, advertisements in the media houses. But yes, Indians were taken out safely on the Ukraine. Indians were taken out safely on the Iran also. When the case of, I would say, Turkey even happened, Turkey's earthquake came about, we went and helped them also. So whenever such issues have happened, India has always been, I would say, proactive. So that shows that yes, we have the capability to punch above our weight class, and yes, we should do that more. So I hope the administration has been listening to the voices of the people. There has been debates in the past also that yes, India can expand more and more than they are initially doing. Even in the case of Operation Sindoor, yes, we were able to send a fleet of, I would say, diplomats and individuals to talk across the world on the way Operation Sindoor happened. But if we would have been proactively taking steps just when the war had been beginning also, I think it would have been a much better thing for India. I still remember the case of the Afghanistan Pakistan issue. So when the war between Afghanistan and Pakistan was going on, the Afghanistan meme pages, the Twitter handle was very much active. Like they were doing the live stream of the things which have been happening. They were directly quoting the way things have been evolving. And I think that gave a better picture of how things have been evolving. Yes, we all know that Pakistan has no chance when it comes to the war against India. But if we would have been able to showcase on that spot the things that have been happening, I think we would have got a much better edge. The so-called, I would say, the claims which have been made by Pakistan and the other world leaders. I don't want to quote them directly here. So that could have been avoided. So that's where I feel that India can punch much above their weight class. And yes, we can do that. We showed it yesterday, the last week also. Last week, Poland's deputy prime minister was in India. Mr. Jaishankar directly opposed him and said that the way you have been operating in Pakistan, the way you have been supporting the infrastructures there, it goes against India. So yes, this shows that we can diplomatically fight them, and I hope we are able to better evolve in this case. Coming up next is how does domestic policies influence foreign policy? I think this particular document is trying the best for me to say something politically wrong. So I would not take the case of India here, and I would take the case of Bangladesh here. So coming to the angle of Bangladesh and how to explain the domestic politics have been influencing the idea of foreign policy. Uh, During the Sheikh Hasina government, we had very good relationships with Bangladesh as a whole. The Jamaat angle and the, I would say, extreme, I would say, the Islamist angle, which had been operating earlier during the 2008 to 10 era, before the Sheikh Hasina government, I think somewhere or the other that had subdued. And that goes to show how domestic politics can influence the way foreign policy goes about. Even in the case of the Maldives issue. So, Maldives President Muizu, he was, I would say, and his party was directly in much more bed with China as compared to their friendship with India. And that's the reason why their foreign policy was started to shape in a way in which India was seen as an anti-right. Once again, coming to the idea of domestic policies, I would go to the case of Nepal. Nepal has had a turbulent government in the past. The government which they even had in the run up to the protests which happened to the Gen Zs. The thing when it comes to the idea of coalition government is you have to listen to the general public. You have to do certain things which might go against the overall foreign policy affairs, overall economy of the country, but you have to take the decisions. The Prachand government was in support of India, but KP Oli was completely against India. He was in support of China. He used to say Ayodhya is part of Nepal and all those things that he used to say. So this shows that how domestic policies often influence foreign policy. Should that be the case? Of course, it should not be the case. You can't compromise your own, I would say, country's foreign policy just because you want to appease the domestic policies. Once again, going back to Canada, what happened in the case of Canada last year? Uh, Mr. Trudeau, he wanted to support his own domestic policies. He wanted to show that he had the support of the Khalistan faction there. He wanted to have the government of Jagmeet Singh retained there so that his own powers can be secured. But what happened? Those domestic policies impacted the relation which they had with India. And yes, they are improving. Canada's relation with, I think, China was also at the worst of the case back in the time of Trudeau. But when Mark Carney has come, things have started to improve. So yes, domestic policies matter a lot when it comes to the idea of foreign policy. Eighth question also done. Ninth question also done. Should India focus on regional or global leadership first? Should India focus on regional or global leadership first? So my question, first of all, here would be, what does this regional mean by? Am I want to talk about India as a region, or I want to talk about South Asia as a region? So I'm going to take an assumption here that I'm mentioning South Asia and in general global South, and then I'm building to the case of global leadership. And yes, this is what I feel should be the case. Even when it comes to the idea of USA per se, or even in the case of USSR, initially in the run up of them becoming a global leader, they first of all, I would say, stabilize their own borders and frontiers. For example, in the case of USA, Till the case when USA as a whole entity, this particular which map we entirely see, had been established, USA was an isolationist country overall. They directly did not used to interact with the rest of the world. They followed a policy wherein they did not like to interact with the rest of the world. But yes, they would only focus on expanding within the USA itself. However, when they saw a bit of regional stability, decided to move outside, decided to expand their base, and we see currently what has happened. Same is the case of Russia also. Russia initially was fixated on fixing its own border, securing a, I would say, strategic position from the rest of the Europe. And when that boundary started to came about the region of Ural Mountains, they knew that now we can expand the way we want to do. So that's where I feel that yes, regional leadership matters a lot. Even in the case of UK, the UK France war has been going since ages when it comes to the idea of the world history. Whenever the stability used to come about in the region, that's when only they would go for a much global scale. So even in the case of India, I feel firstly we need a regional, I would say, stability. Until and unless we are somewhat able to solve the issue of our dear friend Pakistan and China, things are going to be tough for us. I still remember that quote very much where we say that China and Pakistan has always contained India within the South Asia only. Our resources are heavily invested in the case of Pakistan and China. Our counter agencies, our military tactics heavily focus that the issue on the Pakistan side or the side of China does not come about. So if we are somewhat able to focus well when it comes to the idea of Pakistan and China, I think things can be better. But sorry to be a sadist here, things don't look nice, especially in the overall South Asia right now. Afghanistan currently has the Taliban government. We have, though, established ties with them, but directly a recognition for Afghanistan across the world has not happened. Pakistan, just a second. Thank you for being such a great help. Thank you, Misty. So Pakistan case also same is there. We have that the issue of civil military, I would say hybrid government is there. In the case of Nepal, the current I would say regime is just a panic mode right now. We don't have a confirmed thing which is going to happen in the future for Nepal. Same is the case for Myanmar. We have the junta ruling there. The coup is still in the play. In the case of Bangladesh, we have the new government. Sri Lanka had its own fiasco a couple of years back. Yes, it has been stabilizing a bit. In the case of ASEAN, also we have see the issues happening. Thailand and Cambodia has been an issue. So regional stability is something which I feel India needs to focus initially, somewhere or the other. Despite the fact that the agency of SARC has not been happening well the way it should have been happening. I think if we can have some channels, some revival of BIMSTEC even, I think that might help once again for South Asia's stability in the long run. And once we would have a stability in South Asia, next up would be the idea of global South, which I had discussed in the previous video also, how the global South and the angle of India China has been evolving up. So that's my stance for the idea of this that yes, first of all, we need to focus on regional leadership because if we are not able to project ourselves as a competent individual and if we are not able to confirm that the overall stability is ensured in the region, I don't think we would be able to go towards the broader idea of global leadership. Okay. Coming up, is India's neighborhood policy a success or a failure? I will go with the take of success only here because, like I mentioned, hello Jajat, nice to have you back. So, case of the India's neighborhood policy, I think, despite the fact that yes, we haven't had our issues in the past, the way things have evolved, but more or less, I think our neighborhood policy, to some extent, has been a success. Despite the fact that yes, we had issues with, say, the Maldives government in the past, but still, at the end of the day, we were able to, I would say, cool down things with them. In the case of Nepal, yes, we are facing issues, but yes, we are trying to, I would say, accommodate the things which have been happening there. We are closely following those. Bangladesh has been an issue. Pakistan has been an issue. I would say we have been trying our best we can when it comes to the idea of our neighborhoods, but you can't change your neighbors. You are fixed to live with them, you are fixed to see them every day as you wake up in the morning. So that's something I would say is a geographical curse. There's that great book also with the name of Geographical Curse, I think, that you can't change the borders which you have. And I think, yes, we face the brunt of that a lot. So that's my take. I think it's a bit of a complex issue to talk about. There's risk of some politically insensitive terms, might I say, so I would be a bit of hesitant here. So here's the flag from my side for the first question. Coming up next ahead, how should India respond to China's influence in South Asia? Okay, that's a good one. Now let's go for क्या नाम था उसका चाइना स्ट्रिंग ऑफ पर्ल्स. So this is how China has been trying to box India for now in the South Asia. It's a map visible. Yes. So this is the case of the South Asia. China has had its, I would say, key roots in Hong Kong, across Cambodia, in the area of Myanmar, the Chittagong port in Bangladesh, the Gwadar port in Pakistan, the Hambantota in Sri Lanka, Maldives, and then Djibouti. They have not shown. There was a, was it in Djibouti or was it in Oman? Chinese port in Djibouti or was it in Oman? I think it was in Djibouti. Yeah, it was in Djibouti only. So yeah, they are not shown here. Somewhere around here in the Djibouti also we see a map, a particular port of China here, and that's where the logic of string of pearls come about. The way in which China has been trying to box India in it, and now to counter that, India has come up with a strategy of necklace of diamonds. So this is how the necklace of diamonds looks like. We are trying to mainly enclose China in the same way that they had tried to enclose us, and for that we are using some strategic choke points. Firstly, as I mentioned in the last video, also the idea of Malacca Strait. We had the case of Malacca Strait here, so that's a big choke point for China. Changi in Singapore and Sabang in Indonesia. Then was the case of Seychelles, so that we can directly counter the Oman, sorry, the Djibouti port here. Then we have the case of Oman. Then we have the case of Chabahar. Chabahar is something which we see as a counter to directly the idea of Gwadar port, and then the Mongolia. So that's how we see India counteracting against China's tactics. I just remember one thing from the last video. I don't think if Mohit is here right now. Mohit had asked me a doubt on INSTC. So just going a bit of tangent from here. INSTC. The term of Qatar, I thought it might be of importance and we can talk about this. So the thing is, currently the way trade has been happening amongst India and Russia, it has been a very long path. So here is Russia. You can't use Caspian Sea directly to go for the ports because it's an enclosed area. So we prefer the route of Black Sea here. I don't remember the exact, I would say the state here, but it was the Sea of Bab al Mandab here. Am I right? Not showing it. Think it was Bab al Mandab Strait here somewhere. Yeah, Sea of Azuz. Then we had the Kerch Strait here. The Black Sea was here. We used to cross the area of Mediterranean Sea, then enter Red Sea. Here was the Bab al Mandab Strait. Yeah, the Bab al Mandab Strait was here. The Gulf of Oman came about. Sorry, the Gulf. Sorry, Gulf of Oman is the Gulf of Eden came here, and then we used to reach the area of here for the trade part, and that's how the Russia trade, India-Russia trade used to happen. But with the issue of Ukraine wars and the other issues of the long trade path, we were trying to build up the INSTC, the India North-South Transit Corridor, wherein from Gwadar we were to link the area of Russia. So this particular map would show this very much well. I think this map. So this was the case of Mumbai. We were to go across Chabahar port, and then via the help of train paths or even the idea of, I would say, the trucks, we used to reach the area of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and then cross into Moscow. So that was something which we were trying to build up under the North-South Transport Corridor. However, we are facing huge issues when it comes to the idea of Chabahar port. Firstly, thanks to our dear friend Mr. Trump, The sanctions on Iran are back again. In the initial run-up, we had some, I would say, leeway for the case of Chabahar port for the 5 years. The sanctions had been lifted up, but once again, the sanctions are back on. So the proposed Chabahar and INSTC corridor has been impacted a lot, and that's something it's still in the news. It's still in development. But there is one particular route that's also in the news is the Vladivostok Chennai route. That's something which has been helping India and Russia. Vladivostok, yep. So this is another alternative route which we have in the case of India and Russia. From the Vladivostok, Russia, we can go all the way from the Strait of Malacca to Chennai and have the trade going on. So that's the case of INSTC. Thanks a lot, Mohit, for discussions last time. I was not able to see the chat, but this time I'm following it. Coming up next ahead, does India need formal military alliances? Formal military alliances. See, I don't think this is something which India should have, and that's directly case of what we saw recently, which happened. Uh, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan had actually signed a deal recently, wherein which if Saudi Arabia goes against war with someone or someone attacks Saudi Arabia, it would mean that there is a war against Pakistan also. The thing in such kind of deals, I feel personally, is that you are tied to that country now. Suppose if God forbid something happens in the future and we have, say, a treaty with maybe Europe, we have a treaty with Europe, and let's take a realistic example. Like suppose we are as a French evolving with Germany. Suppose we have alliance with Germany, a former military alliance. God forbid something happens in the next future, and Russia goes against war with Germany. Do you think India would be able to go up against Russia then? Russia being a strategic partner of ours since so much long times, the way they have been helping us, the way we are, the way they have been our all weather friends, I don't think India would go against the war. So that's where I feel the idea of former military alliances is a very shady angle. The whole case of NATO, where one country, if invokes the idea of Article 5 because they have been attacked, I feel this to be a terrible angle because you get tied to others. Your, I would say, focus and your military infrastructure would have to be, I would say, constantly in a process that they have to be shifted anywhere soon if a particular idea of war breaks about. But that's where I feel the former military alliance is something which India should not have, and that's the reason why we don't always agree to that. Even in the case of Quad, I still remember that we agreed for the idea of economy, but directly going up against China in the angle of the military, we did not agree for that. So that's thing which I feel that India does not need the angle of the military alliances for now. How important is diaspora diplomatically? It's very much important. The best case, once again, I would like to go towards the India Latin America. See, we have good relations with Europe. We have good diplomacy going on with USA also. The biggest angle being that many of our diaspora are living in Europe and USA. But when it comes to the idea of Latin America, somewhere or the other, we are facing some issues. Firstly, a direct one-to-one communication between the people is lagging. Biggest issue being the idea of language. The majority of population in Latin America speaks the language of Spanish and Portuguese language. And despite the fact that yes, India has been expanding in various cultures, we have been learning French, we have been learning Spanish, we have been learning Portuguese, but still a formal educational setup, a formal, I would say, connect with Spanish and Portuguese is somewhere which we lag. And that's where the idea of diaspora comes about. If India would have had people directly going as diaspora, as I would say immigrants or as workers in the Latin America region, diplomacy would have really favored us. For example, in the case of Middle East, in the area of West Asia, in the case of Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, majority population of India is working here. The diaspora base is very much up and alive here, and that helps us to get remittances, that help us to, I would even say, get up a image of the way which we can talk with the people. For example, if in the case of Saudi Arabia we see Indians being, I would say, opposed, or the way Indians are being treated, we can open up a diplomacy channel on the back door that boss, you are disrespecting our diaspora, and India is someone who respects their citizens, so we would take some particular, I would say, aggressive stance for them. That's where I feel diaspora as a diplomacy can help a lot. It can start an initial chain, as and when more and more Indians would start to be part of the country, would be part of the mainstream of that country, it would help India in the long run. That's what I feel for the case of how important is diaspora diplomatically. Has globalization benefited India strategically? Has globalization benefited India strategically? Well, there will be pros and cons here. If I have to go for the case of pros here, so firstly, I would say we have been able to integrate our economy with the rest of the world. Also, the case of, I would say, service sector. Service sector is an industry somewhere which India has performed very well. The outsourcing of capital to foreign nations, that's something which we have done very well. And that's where I feel that globalization has benefited India strategically. Somewhere or the other, the way we used to perceive things, I would say, even in the angle of culture, somewhere or the other, a bit of, I would say, liberalness has been coming up in India. What are the cons? Cons would be the worst again the case if we read that strategic autonomy goes for a toss when you are more and more connected. If the things are going bad somewhere, you are going to face the impact. We saw that in the case of 2008 financial crisis. We are seeing it today also with the case of Ukraine and Russia. COVID was a very good example for that, with the cons of globalization has impacted. Even in the case of culture, I see sometimes the core tenets which India used to have, they have started to impact. India was a country which has always favored the idea of family and, I would say, respect for the elders. But somewhere deep down, I have started to see that we are losing the touch. The too much consumption of, I would say, phones, the too much Netflix usage and other stuffs. I think that has been impacting India culturally. So yeah, there are pros, there are cons, but somewhere or the other, yes, there's a balance which we have achieved. So coming for what are India's core national interests today. So here is something which I would like to share for here, and I think it would help many people here, especially if you are someone who is preparing for UPSC examination. That's going to help you a lot. So whenever you have to see a country's, I would say, position of how they are dealing with the rest of the world, there's a trick which can help you a lot. Just a second. So this is this framework. It's the medic. Even if you are a normal, I would say, geopolitical enthusiast or someone who has been following geopolitics, if you're able to structure your answer is this in this particular framework, it would really help you. So M stands for military, E stands for economy, D stands for development, I stands for institutions, C stands for culture, S is strategic, strategies, H is a health angle. So, full disclosure, this particular framework has been taken from Mr. Shivan sir. Shout out to Shivan sir from Sarthi IS, the goat of economy, the goat of, I would say, science and tech. I hope he can watch my video someday and be proud. Environment, and then the idea of, why have I repeated the word D twice? Just a second. Yeah, it's just this medic. So here, so this is the framework which can help you a lot when it comes to the idea of seeing what are some particular, I would say, avenues which a country would need to explore. So coming over to what are India's core national interests today, military. We need, I would say, what's that word? I would say exchange of technology. Yes, exchange of technology, and that's something we often hear in the news that India, whenever is talking about a military or say a defense deal. Very nice, sir. Hello from Canada. Thank you. Bye. So, in the case of military, yeah, an exchange of technology is something which India has always been talking about. If we are able to strategically position ourselves in a way in which we are also able to incorporate the indigenous aspect with the tech from abroad, I think we can very much position ourselves as a much more military power. And his, I think there was this, I'm not remembering it exactly. So there was this uh, article, I think, from Mr. Harsh V. Pant. So he is the head of ORF, and I would very much like to meet him one day if I can. So he had mentioned the idea of that. I'm remembering the exact term which he had used. So source code, yes, source code angle. So Rafale has actually not shared their source code with us. When it comes to the idea of operating the military infrastructure, the thing is we have Rafale as our fighter jets, and we have the defense equipment in the form of the S-400. So the S-400 is from the side of Russia, and the Rafale is side from the European side. So the source code angle is that if we are able to have a source code angle, we can specify within that that these particular equipments are for us. For example, the Sukhoi is, if we are able to use, it can differentiate amongst each other. The thing is, if we lack the angle of source code, somewhere or the other, it leads to inaccuracies when it comes to the fully operational. I would need to read a bit more of here. I'm not much of a defense guy, so I would need to read much more for this. But if I am factually correct, I think this was the case that source code was something which was in the news a lot. But I will read on about this more. Source code angle. That's the case for the military. In the case of economy, yep. Strategically, we need more, I would say, independence and divest our options. And we have started to do that. Last week in the Indian Express, there was that article in which it had been quoted that 1.8% reduction happened in the case of India US trade. But overall, we increased overall 1.8% trade with the rest of the world, mainly because we were able to get trade deals with China, get trade deals with, I would say, also the case of UAE, which overall helped us to, I would say, expand our economical base. So that's something which we need to keep in more mind with the goal of reaching the top three in the economies. Economy is something which we are looking for, and checking the slide of rupee, something which is very important here. The rupee has been falling a lot recently against the dollar. There has been issues in the past also with the decline of rupee, the power being falling, but something has to be done for that because the pullouts of FIIs and FDIs have been increasing. I remember last week, no, even yesterday only, there was this article from Indian Express. Let me quote you that article. So it was said that net FDI outflows recorded for third straight month in November, as per the RBI. So for 3 consecutive months, the outflow of the FDI has been increasing up. So it's a big issue because as and when the FDIs and the FIIs start to pull out, the institutional insti, institutional investment starts to suffer, and I would say an image of investor friendly starts to decrease. So that's where we need to work on in the economic case. Coming up development, infra is something we need to expend more, and especially the idea of inventory and logistical costs. Okay. So logistical costs. Like I had mentioned the case of Latin America, I would like to go once again there only. India, if wants to send some, I would say, shipments towards, adds to the logistical cost within the trade of India. When it comes to the idea of China, there's that I would say statement. I don't remember the exact facts, but compared to India, issues, especially around the aspect of turnaround time, the ability to, I would say, carry on the entire supply chain process. They have been very much quick as compared to us, and that's where I feel India needs to invest more. The Gati Shakti plan has been in the news. It's a multi-modal transport infra project which can help India a lot for the case of bettering our overall infrastructure. So that's something which has been in the news, and this is something which India needs to focus a lot. Coming over institutions, we need to engage more internationally. So we have been expanding. International Solar Alliance is something which is a founder project of India and France. CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, has been something in the news. The IMEC corridor is something which we are building up. One Sun, One World, One Grid is also something which we have been working on. If I have to give the context for the One Sun, One World, One Grid, it's the idea of connecting under the International Solar Alliance everything from Australia all the way to India and Europe. Let me show you a map here. One Sun, One World, One Grid. So, world map. Yep. This is how it looks like. We are trying to connect the entire world under the ambit of the Solar Alliance, wherein which we can harness the energies amongst each other. So this is something which should be in the news, and I think this is a very nice thing on which India can build upon. It shows that we are, I would say, environmentally sensitive also, and yes, we are focusing on things that matters. So this is something which we need to focus on a lot. Apart from that, we need to expand the idea of BRICS. The G7 and the issues of US NATO are going to increase, and if in such a case BRICS is able to present itself as a new, I would say, agency in the idea of international relations, it would be very much good for the entire BRICS setup. That's something which I feel. Coming up, core national interest culture. Soft power is what India is known for. Like I mentioned, the idea of yoga, the food, the tourism sector. This is something which I feel we can work more on. India has some very, very pretty spots for tourism, which we need to expand. And for there, the idea of safety of women and, sorry to say, the idea of civic sense comes about. Going a bit of tangent, but something which I feel India needs to work on is the safety of women and civic sense. See, everyone knows the news which has been happening in the past. There was the case in Goa. I think there was the case in Bangalore also, wherein a woman was harassed, and this needs to change. Somewhere or the other, a bit of civic sense, a bit of sensibility has to come in the people of India, because our image has been tarnished a lot in the global world. We have some very, very good spots for India, for the outside world to visit. There's that village in Uttarakhand with the name of Mana. That's a somewhat dream location where I want to visit. Mana village, Uttarakhand. It's very, very, I would say, calm and soothing to look like. There is that Patni top near Jammu. It's just the mountains of India. Then we have Arunachal Pradesh as a tourism sector. So we have a lot to offer, but unfortunately, the way things have been happening, we are not being able to cash in the idea of tourism. And I feel if slowly and steadily, if we are able to focus on the idea of tourism, we can get a lot of edge, because we have a lot to offer. We have the beaches of Andaman Nicobar Islands. The Radhanagar beach in Andaman Nicobar Islands is actually even under the blue flag certification program. Lakshadweep is a good, I would say, location for that. The backwaters of Kerala. There's a friend of mine mentions Varanasi a lot. Varanasi Ghat, Ganga Aarti. So this is something which people really like to visit. just to sit there, be calm, and enjoy it. So I think tourism as a sector is something which India can more and more improve on. Civic sense, something which we can focus on, and that's something which we can help. That's something which can help India in the long run. Coming over the idea of strategies, the mission of Vasudev Kutumbakam needs to be carried ahead, and that's something we have discussed already in the long terms of global south and regional stability. Something I feel here. Angle of health, I am not per se the best when it comes to the medical ideas, so I would give a yellow flag here. And if I get some more notes, I would mention here. However, if you want a basic context, pharma is something India has been leading. The trade which we had USA was dominated in pharma. So that's something which we have very well working for us. Once again, environment. Well, the climate change has been brewing up. I did a entire video on that also the last time. That's something which we need to focus on. The incidents of floods in Bihar, the issues of monsoon, and pollution, the dear pollution of Delhi. Yep, that's something which needs to be focused. And I hope sense prevail sooner or later in the heads of our bureaucracy and administration. Should India mediate international conflicts? Just a second. Note that for now. Cool. So, should India mediate international conflicts? See, this is something which I feel we should avoid. This is something which I feel we should avoid in the case of mediation, because whenever the talks of even India and Pakistan issue to be resolved comes about, India always says that India and Pakistan issue is a personal issue, is a one to one country issue, and it's better if the countries can chalk out a path amongst each other. Having some third party come in and solve a problem which exists between two nations, I personally don't like that idea very much, because if a country is behaving like a mediator amongst two nations, a string gets attached. You are, I would say, obligated, or I would say, in a loop of feedback which that country might ask you for. So I personally feel that India should avoid direct international mediation, and that's why I feel that we directly have not been part of the same. Even the Board of Peace Plan, the way Gaza Peace Plan came about, directly Mr. Modi did not went there. Even in the past, yes, we have had opportunities where people have said to yes, mediate. We have shared our comments with the respective leaders at our own end, but to bring about two people on the table and then start talking with them, I think we have not done that, and I feel we should avoid that. Just because we have also our own issues, and just like we don't want others to intermingle in our affairs, I don't feel we should intermingle. How does India balance value and interests? I think this has been covered in the angle of which we see the case of global south, or the way we treat the idea of culture. So I think these two are covered pretty well already. What defines success in foreign policy? That's a very good question. Defines success in foreign policy. It's a very good question. I think I can once again link that medic said here. Medic, medics. So in the case of military, I feel. Just a second. Is my chat working? Just let me have a look. काफी टाइम से कोई कमेंट नहीं आया. Just let me check. With this particular deal, I am. With this particular deal, I am Hello. Yep, it's working fine. So coming up ahead once again. Just a second. Yep, it's working fine. So coming up ahead once again. Just a second. Yeah, it's working fine now. So yeah, coming upon what defines success in the foreign policy. So in the case of military, first of all, I would say being able to defend and being able to, I would say, present ourselves when the case of overall conflict comes about. I think that's something matters a lot in the foreign policy. Once again, quoting the idea of Machiavelli here, it's a realist world with countries trying to think of idealist setup. So having a lack of a military, a powerful, competent military would be an issue. So yeah, that's something which is needs to be accommodated. In the case of economy, being self-sufficient and not being swayed or forced to bend the knees to ongoing sanctions or diplomatic issues. I feel something which defines the idea of foreign policy. Success in foreign policy comes the idea of development. The more and more you are actively engaged in build-up of development channels across the world, I feel the more power you have. In the case of institutions, once again, the more power you wield and the better you are able to negotiate things is something which shows a good foreign policy. Culture is something which I feel matters a lot when it comes to the idea of quality. We often hear the word of what's that name called Thailand's this dish, the Thai dish. So it can be anything when it comes to the idea of, I would say, culture. Tourism could be something which shows that yes, foreign policy has very much, I would say, designed that country around that particular contours. For example, the case of Thailand, even the Singapore case, where the UAE also, the ability to position yourself in a way where which your tourism acts as a brand ambassador for you across the country, across the world, it helps you a lot. So that's something which I feel the idea of culture, the idea of religion, yoga, which I mentioned of India, even gastronomy, I would say. That Thai food of Thailand, even the Chinese food, it's not of, I would say, love for the rest of the world. That's where I feel the idea of a success in foreign policy comes about. I think even there was this case study once on how Thailand won the diplomacy in gastronomy. So something I would say you can have a look on later. And S comes the idea of strategy, how you are able to position yourself in the rest of the world. Are you competent to stand or are you bending the knees? That's what I feel comes to the idea of defining success in foreign policy. Done with 20 questions, right? Give me a second. Is the world moving towards bipolarity again? I think I discussed this last time also in the case of US China, that post the decline of USSR, when China started to rise against the economic advantages which Deng Xiaoping had given them, the idea of bipolarity started to emerge, and That's something I think I discussed this already. 21st and 22 have been discussed. Is the liberal international order declining? Strategic autonomy, the case of international power. Yes, we have discussed that also already. Is China revisionist power? Yeah. I had to discuss this, but I would like to once again mention this example here. So, strategic autonomy and presenting itself as the force to reckon. I think China is the best example for a revisionist policy. China often claims that this is a particular map which they had in the past and they want to reclaim that particular territory once again. There was the case of the nine dash line in this particular area. There was this case of, I would say, the five palms, which say the sorry, the palm and the five fingers, which they mention. The palm being the Tibet, fingers being the Aksai Chin, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, and the Arunachal Pradesh area. So that's something which has been, I would say, as a revisionist tendency of China since long. And I would like to give a bit of context for this particular angle. So in the 1900s, when China started to see the Europe and the Americans reach their shores, initially they did not wanted to trade with the rest of the world. They wanted to have their own peace. They wanted to have their own, I would say, economy up and running. However, because the Europeans wanted to promote their own stance, the Europeans wanted to showcase their own power and the trade. They wanted to, I would say, dump their goods in China. A opium war took place between China and the Western powers, wherein China got defeated, and they had to open up themselves for the rest of the world. The trade started in China. They faced a huge impact with that. Then the case of Japan. Japan was a very strong power back during the time of the World War eras, and they had inflicted a lot of pain and hardship on the Chinese people back then. There's a famous case of Nanking rape incident also, with the Japanese committed atrocities in China, and that's where China has somewhere or the other started to, I would say, live by the policy of what's that word called, century of humiliation. So, having had faced the century of humiliation, they have always taught their students and even their own setup that you have to take revenge for the things that have happened in the past. And that's where the term the revisionist policy comes about, wherein they are trying to undermine and change each and everything which happened in the past. They have even, like I mentioned in the last time also, they've even reached agreement with the Amur River issue with China and Russia. They took over Tibet for their own strategic gains. They have had conflicts with India in the border region of Aksai Chin. They keep on constantly claiming Arunachal Pradesh to be part of them. And then the classic South China Sea. There was a nine dash line, a map was shown from the past. The nine dash line was expanded to the 10 dash line also. So that's what I feel key has been something which China has been using for its own gains. And yes, in that sense, I feel China is a revisionist power. However, it does not help anyone in the long run apart from China, because the world faces that brunt. If you start to accommodate everything which you want, it would lead to just hard power games. And at the end of the day, it's what's the word called, the zero sum game. So you have gonna face the losses. That's the case for China as a revisionist power. Just give me a second. Okay. Coming up next said, can US China rivalry avoid conflict? I think 25, 26 can be clubbed together, and I can talk about them in one go only here. So I think I'd mentioned this last time also in the case of the Cold War era, that the biggest reason why Russia failed against USA was the idea of economy. At the end of the day, if a country has to survive, you need money, you need the people to be happy. And if economically you are weak and economically you are not able to satisfy the needs of the people, you are going to lose. That's what happened in the case of USSR also. Economically, they had started to, I would say, lose the battle against capitalism. And that's where I feel China did focus well. They overall increased their economic base. They started to invest in the economies and they help them in the long run. So that's where I feel, firstly, the issue of US China as a rivalry started to emerge up, where China was seen as an alternate agent compared to the US power. And the thing which stands right now is USA is the military might right now versus China is emerging to be a economic might. So that's something which I feel in the case of the USA and China. Uh, can the rivalry avoid conflict? Yes, they can very much avoid it. I had mentioned in the last time also the idea of the ping pong diplomacy, wherein certain channels, the backdoor meetings, the diaspora connects had ensured that short short peace can be maintained. So it's in that angle I feel that if economy can be, I would say, a route between the two, the overall large scale, I would say, avoid can be avoided between the two, because as and when two countries are more and more economically tied, they have lesser and lesser reasons of going up against each other. The fact that I mentioned last time also is key. The reason why India and China have never went up against each other is the issue of the trade. We know that we are dependent on China for the trade, and China also knows that yes, they are somewhere or the other getting the benefits of the trade with India, and that's where I feel that trade is something which ties to peoples. And if the case of trade remains, up till then, I feel that the idea of peace and stability between India and China, and even in the case of USA and China, can be ensured. So to avoid the conflict, firstly, economy can be something wherein they can have some accommodations, some cooperations, and biggest thing is the idea of mishappenings or some misfortunes don't take place in the case of the Indo-Pacific region. I think a major conflict can be avoided. If in case some issue comes in the near future, it would start from the Indo-Pacific only. So if the two countries are sensible enough to not go up against each other directly in the Indo-Pacific, I think that's when the idea of avoiding conflict can come about. Coming from the case now, next up question: what lessons does the World War offer today? Sorry, Cold War offer today? I think the biggest one is we need to avoid two poles in the world. Because the thing is, last time what happened in the case of the Cold War, if I have to take the case of Vietnam firstly. So Vietnam was supported by the North Vietnam was supported by the angle of USSR and China. The South Vietnam saw the invasion of USA and then they tried to take over the area of Vietnam and then the war followed up. Even in the case of Korea, we saw the same case happening. There were proxy wars also across the world. The issues of coups took place. So that's what I feel that firstly, whenever there are two factions across the world, they would try their best to instigate proxy wars across the world in whatever the way they can in the things which help them all. So that's what I feel is something that we need to keep in mind, that war as a diplomacy should never be used. And I'm sorry to say, but this has started to decline once again. There was that article I remember last couple of months wherein it shows that how this particular mandate of UN, it's actually a mandate of UN, where it says that war as a diplomacy is not allowed. So there is this UN Charter of 1945, which directly says that war as an instrument of national policy diplomacy cannot be used. But we see this thing changing. The US Military of Justice has changed its name to the Military of Defense. So the War Ministry. So this particular shows that idea of war as channel for power and the power games has been increasing up, and sooner and later down the road this is going to impact the rest of the world once again. So if this can be avoided, I think this should be avoided. That's the first lesson. Second, once again, is the idea of economy and confidence building. If the two factions reach compromises and sit together, I think such an issue can be avoided, which happened back then in the case of USSR and USA also. The fear and animosity amongst each other, the constant overthinking that who will attack, can be avoided if people would have been sane enough to talk it out. That's something which I feel, and especially the idea of nucleus, which I feel is a big issue once again right now. So the biggest reason why we did not saw a direct large scale war happening between USA and Russia was the angle of nuclear. The nuclear weapons which the two countries had the potential to, I would say, wrap up the entire world if this particular war has started to came about. So nuclear is something which I feel is once again important right now. There has been talks of in the initial years that nuclear proliferation should be stopped, but the way things have been happening, I would like to mention that it's not looking good. Initially, when Mr. Trump came to power, he had mentioned that he would talk for nuclear proliferation to stop, but now we see that approximately in February 5th or 7th, the last remaining nuclear treaty between USA and Russia is about to stop, the New START treaty, and it would be the end of an era in the case of nuclear discussions. So I feel this is something which a lesson which we could have learned from the past, that as and when the nuclear setup would increase, it would not lead to peace. It would even lead to more and more chaos. That's something which we should have learned, but we have not learned. Coming up next, as ideological prevalent, I have covered that. I would say in the idea of realism here already is economic interdependence and deterrent to war. Yes, exactly. The same thing we mentioned in the initial run up. If the economies are connected, if the people are trading, war would never happen. Has globalization, how should middle powers act today? I've covered up that also. Coming up next is, has globalization peaked? I think it has peaked because we have started to now see the rise of economies and I would say factions within countries, wherein they're talking more and more about the idea of regionalism and thinking inward. As and when the countries are going inward and inward, the globalization now has started to, I would say, stagnate. Yes, the globalization was needed in the initial run up, but slowly and steadily it has peaked, and now countries are focusing more towards their own benefits. We see rise of nationalist party across the globe. The right wing has been expanding, and that's something which shows that globalization has peaked and has become stagnated. That's my take, but I think more and more as AI and tech evolves, might might see a change. Just a second. Okay. As globalization peaked, that's also done. Just a second. Is power shifting? from west to east. I think yes, we can agree to this fact that yes, the powers have been shifting towards the eastern side a bit more with the rise of the BRICS, the new development bank especially, and the way India, China, and in general the West Asia especially, the Middle East, which we call, they have been, I would say, the helm of the economic train recently in the past, and that's something which I feel shows that yes, the power has been shifting towards the east. The economic, I would say, power which China holds, the way the UAE has presented itself, and the way India is able to talk with the rest of the world, I think this shows that yes, the power is shifting towards east. There are other powers also, for example, the case of Japan, which has been rising in the initial run up. So that's where I feel that the power has been shifting from the west to the east. Okay. I think I would like to take a stop here. I think I've covered 31 questions here. So I think I would need two more videos, and then in those two videos, I can cover the majority of the portions. Yeah, my throat is about to go, and I think my capacity to speak English is now over. English capacity is over. So, just to sum up, the main topics that we have discussed today, I think, have been more or less evolved around the idea of multilateralism and the case of India, China, USA, and Russia as a whole. The ambit of how things can take place in the case of geopolitics, especially the angle of medics. That's something I feel is a very good acronym which you can use anywhere as a framework or just about to talk about with someone on how things can happen. That's something which can help you a lot. So I think that's it from my side when it comes to the idea of geopolitics from this time about. If you need, I would say, more assistance, I would share this document with the global, so the description I think I've attached already, so you can have a look for that. And I would make two more videos, I think, and yes, that would cover up the majority of the portion. Maybe tomorrow, maybe today, even. Let's see how things go about. Anyways, thanks a lot for tuning in. There was some good interaction going on today in the chat. Thanks to Gitaksh, Mishti, Yajat. I'm not able to read the other name. Aryan is here, Sajan is here. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. Felt very nice that yes, some of the other people were listening to the chat. So yeah, thanks a lot. Baki, I would be coming up with another videos very soon. So till then, I would say just be geopolitically aware, follow the news. Things have been evolving once again. I think the case of Trump has been followed by everyone. He has, I would say, backed off once again from the idea of Greenland, whether he wants to apply tariffs or he wants to, I would say, further pursue the taking of Greenland. But yeah, things have been evolving. So let's see how things evolve. Anyway, thanks a lot. Wish you the best and we'll catch you soon. Thank you.